Violence is a powerful tool. I can't argue with that. However, you have to be stronger than your opponent for that to work to your advantage. Understand? I asked. Huh? The four of you won't be enough to stop me. What? Ibuki raised an incredulous eyebrow. Ryuen clutched his sides in raucous laughter. Oh, I think Ayanokoji's saying he's not to yield to violence from the likes of us. Then show me what you've got. Ishizaki. Are you sure? Ishizaki hesitated. It would have been one thing if his opponent were someone like Sudo, who was known for getting into fights. But I was a regular student. His resistance was understandable. Don't hold back. Take him out. But if we give Ayanokoji a thorough beating, there won't be anything more to worry about. Wait! Cried Karuizawa as Ishizaki approached me. Why are you doing something so stupid? You have nothing to gain by beating up Kiyotaka. Hey! Stay out of this, Karuizawa. You served your purpose here. Thanks to Ayanokoji's sacrifice, your secret is safe. Show some gratitude. Ryuen grabbed Karuizawa's hair once again. He shoved her away. Stay out of it. Even so, Karuizawa bared her teeth at Ryuen for my sake. She got back up and tried to leap at him. Don't worry, Karuizawa, I said, stopping her in her tracks. But there's nothing to be anxious about. That's right. You're the one who ought to worry, Ishizaki told me, stepping forward. I'm not a bad guy, Ayanokoji. I'm just following Ryuen-san's orders. I don't really care, I told him. This was all going according to plan. Ishizaki casually threw a punch at me. No, it was more like the swat you might give a naughty child. A slow, monotonous motion that even a junior high or elementary school student could have avoided. His right fist came at me in a wide arc, and I caught it with my hand. Huh? If you're going to do this, you better take it seriously, I warned him. He didn't seem to take the hint, even though I'd completely blocked his blow. Perhaps because it had been such a lazy blow to start. So, I squeezed his fist. My right hand still clamped down on his. I applied more and more pressure. Huh? Huh? Ishizaki's face went taut, and his knees trembled. What's the matter, Ishizaki? Asked Ibuki, sensing something was wrong. Time out! Stop! Ishizaki buckled at the knees and fell. Unable to take it any longer, he grabbed my arm and tried to free himself, but it was futile. Albert was the first to grasp the reality of the situation. He didn't wait for Ryuen's order, but swung at me with his thick arm, which was the width of an electrical pole. He attacked from my left even though I was free on that side, probably anticipating that I would take a defensive stance after Ishizaki freed himself. He was wrong. I could have dodged the attack, but instead, I steeled myself and caught Albert's punch with my left hand, prepared to take a little damage. Smack! An almost electric jolt traveled from my elbow all the way to my shoulder. Just as I thought. That hurts, I mumbled. It was difficult to read Albert's expression behind his sunglasses, but he was probably catching on. No way! You're not messing around, are you, Albert? Ishizaki? Ibuki asked incredulously. Maybe she couldn't tell Albert really had swung at me with all his might, or that Ishizaki was in pain. Or maybe she just didn't want to believe her eyes. I released Ishizaki, who crouched and clutched his arm. Do it, Albert, Ryuen ordered. Albert charged at me, his powerful fists swinging. I had intentionally let him land the first blow, but I couldn't take too many more hits of that caliber, so I dodged under his swing and went in for a frontal attack, punching him in the gut. I didn't hold back either. It wouldn't be wise to underestimate an opponent whose abilities were still largely unknown to me. Based on the slight change in Albert's flat expression and how hard his body had felt against my fist, I judged that I dealt minimal damage. He'd clearly trained his body well, but it still had all the weaknesses human bodies did. All this meant was that I would have to work a bit harder to crush him. The human body had numerous weaknesses. The solar plexus, for instance, was a part you couldn't strengthen through training. At best, you could accustom yourself to pain, so it was easier to endure. He must have realized that I was going for a solar plexus with my next strike, because he twisted away to evade it. However, I'd been fainting in anticipation of just that, and quickly jabbed his throat with my palm like a sword. Albert gurgled in pain. "Ayanokoji!" shouted Ishizaki, charging at me. "If you're going to come at me, don't shout," I said exasperatedly. At least he'd saved me some trouble. I kicked Ishizaki's left knee, sending him to the ground. He was so easy to read. Albert had also fallen to his knees, so I spun and delivered a kick to his face, using my momentum to punch Ishizaki in the jaw on the return. He collapsed, and all was silent on the rooftop. Ryuen, Ibuki, and Karuizawa stared, burning that unbelievable spectacle into their eyes. Well, I guess we underestimated him. He acted so tough because he was confident in his skills, huh? I didn't expect this, said Ryuen. So, you're saying that Ayanokoji turned the tables on you? Ibuki stammered. Are you serious, Ibuki? I asked. Huh? Ryuen's always been the sort to use violence. Do you think I'd voluntarily allow him to engineer a situation where he could rampage without repercussion? Ibuki tilted her head in confusion. Ryuen seemed to have doubts as well. Wait a minute, Ayanokoji. Now even I'm not following. I set up this meeting. You still don't get it, do you? I sighed deeply. Our confrontation here was determined long in advance. I knew that, when faced with the stalemate, Ryuen Kakeru would resort to violence to settle things. Ryuen thought that everything that had happened so far was his doing. He couldn't have been more wrong. If I never intended to reveal my identity, I wouldn't have used Manabe during the sports festival. I knew you'd identify her as the obvious culprit once you heard that recording. That is what led you here, right? I anticipated that you'd question them and learn that I was blackmailing them for bullying Karuizawa, I explained. Ryuen couldn't deny a single thing I'd said so far, naturally. You were convinced that a link existed between Karuizawa and me. You had Ishizaki, Komiya, and the others tail Class D students, and moved openly against Koenji yourself, thinking that it would put pressure on X. I imagine you genuinely enjoyed yourself, but you actually gave me some time to think. My, now you're saying some pretty interesting stuff. So you purposefully made it look like I had you in the palm of my hand? To be more precise, you were dancing in mine, I replied. Allow me to apologize, Ayanokoji. You really are clever. The advantage I thought I had is gone, and now I'm in trouble. What should we do, Ibuki? Ryuen smiled happily. Seriously, what's the deal with you two? Ibuki seethed. Something seemed to snap within her, leaving her frustration free to spill forth. She launched a kick at me, apparently unconcerned that I could see her underwear. Well, it was probably more that it hadn't even occurred to her in her fury. I took a step back and calmly evaded her kick. It was like a switch had been flipped inside of her. Ibuki took a couple steps toward me, closing the distance between us, then kicked again, leaving me little room to dodge. She was good. Even if Horikita had been in the pink of health during their fight on the island, Ibuki would have beaten her. And yet, I evaded all her kicks. Ibuki stopped attacking and clicked her tongue in apparent frustration. Seriously, what are you? You really don't know? I replied. You honestly make me mad. I'm not sure why, but you piss me off. She leapt at me once more. This time, rather than dodge, I immediately closed the distance between us. I wasn't averse to playing with Ibuki, but I didn't want to drag this out much further either. I grabbed her by the neck and slammed her to the ground, giving her no chance to dodge or guard. Her eyes went wide, and she stopped moving entirely. Slamming her head would have been even more effective, but this wasn't a fight to the death. Violence isn't a tool only you and your goons possess, I said to Ryuen. Ibuki, Ishizaki, and Albert, all of Ryuen's right-hand men, lay collapsed on the ground. Karuizawa was unable to utter a word. I'm impressed you're still keeping your cool after seeing that play out, I added. You're not just clever, but also capable of dishing out violence when called upon. I underestimated you. Ryuen clapped in genuine respect as he walked up to me. Do you know what I'd like to say now, Ayanokoji? Nope. He sounded calm, as if he didn't register the weight of his predicament at all. It probably wasn't a bluff. This was something characteristic of Ryuen, something he excelled at. It was what had enabled him to move so confidently for so long. Physical strength alone doesn't determine victory or defeat. You gotta be tough on the inside, too, said Ryuen. He adjusted his stance so that he was lowered to the ground, then thrust his left fist toward me, aiming not for my face, but my abdomen. I leapt backward to evade, and he followed in hot pursuit, jabbing with his right arm. Sorry, but I won't let you hit me, I told him. I evaded him once more, then grabbed his hair with my left hand. He reacted instantly, pushing my arm away. The moment I had his attention focused on my arm, I kicked him hard in the side. Gah! Ryuen immediately put some distance between us to avoid my follow-up attacks. Not bad, Ryuen. He far surpassed Ishizaki in overall strength. I was honestly impressed. He'd taken a serious hit, but showed no sign of being about to collapse. I still had trouble picturing him being a match for Albert, though. This is so much fun! Ryuen laughed louder than before. Turning the tables even after being brought to the pits of despair. This isn't enough for me. I need more, Ayanokoji. He charged at me once more, holding nothing back. His movements weren't those of a trained martial artist, but clearly self-taught, a style shaped by countless brawls. I couldn't dodge all his attacks forever. Why don't you show off your fighting skills more often? Ryuen demanded. I have my reasons. That's so. After I beat you, how about you tell me them? Do you think you're going to win? Do you think you can't lose? Can't really imagine it, sorry. Sure, you might win this time, but what about tomorrow? The day after? So, you're saying if we keep doing this over and over, you'll win eventually? I asked. What about when you're in the middle of pissing? When you're taking a shit? I'll come after you when you least expect it, Ryuen said. Aren't you afraid of losing? I don't get afraid. Never felt fear once in my life. No fear, huh? Now that was interesting. This was probably the source of his confidence. You'll understand once you know pain, Ryuen said. Pain gives way to fear for ordinary people. Teach me about pain, then. With pleasure. Ryuen grabbed my shoulders and kneed me in the stomach. Kiyotaka! Karuizawa screamed. But I'd taken the attack head-on on purpose. Nothing to worry about. Just a few more hits, and you'll get it. Ryuen moved forward to kick me, aiming for the same spot he just hit. He closed the distance between us, and I guarded my face with my left hand. He lashed out with his right arm, and when he pulled it back, struck me again with his right knee. It was his strongest blow yet. I staggered back, feeling pain shoot through my entire body. How about it? You get it now? Unfortunately, I don't get anything, I said. This is just pain. Are you trying to say you're the same as me? That you don't feel fear? That's not it, Ryuen. That's not what I'm saying. I knew all about fear born through pain. I knew the terror and misery of being a loser. I'd seen people destroyed by it before my eyes, time and time again. But eventually, I stopped feeling fear. Instead, I just felt cold, because I'd come to realize that no matter how much suffering or despair others experienced, the same would never happen to me. If you have the means to protect yourself, that's all you need. If you can keep yourself safe from all harm, you win. Then let's play some more! Ryuen showered me with blows, concentrating attacks on my abdomen. I lowered my hips, intercepting his kick. Saw through that, huh? I would deal with this by dodging his attacks and keeping my cool. I absolutely would not take any critical injuries. What's the matter? Aren't you gonna play, Ayanokoji? Why didn't you dodge those easy blows at first, huh? I was testing a hypothesis. I wanted to see whether I could feel that fear you talked about, I replied. You've got some nerve with that condescension, you freak. He'd sensed the gulf in power between us, but he was unfazed. Usually, the more confident a fighter was in their skill, the deeper the despair that overcame them when they discovered themselves outmatched. But I didn't get that feeling from Ryuen. He wasn't in a reckless rage that blinded him to the truth either. I'd let him think he held all the cards, then flipped the table in an attempt to break his spirit. But I'd underestimated his resilience. That was a miscalculation on my part. Of course, misreading his upper limits was a trivial error. It just meant this would take longer than anticipated. Ryuen would just have to suffer that much more pain. Where'd you get this kind of strength? This isn't normal, Ayanokoji. True enough. You didn't get skills like mine just through brawling. I said nothing, but closed the distance to Ryuen, who was clearly waiting to strike back, his sharp gaze fixed on me. You've got all this power, but you keep it hidden? He asked. Do you get off on looking down on mere mortals? Does that turn you on? Make you feel good? I've never looked down on anyone. Whether other people succeed or fail has nothing to do with me. Ryuen didn't seem to like that answer. He pushed his hair back and laughed, as if rejecting the very notion that a person could be that apathetic. Impossible. Humans are made of greed. Of course I experienced greed, among many other things. But that was beside the point. Indulging Ryuen's games wasn't going to change his mind. I readied my stance again, getting in position. All right, then. I'll just keep pounding you until you do feel fear, he barked. That's enough, Ryuen. As he shifted, preparing to drive his knee into my head, I grabbed his left arm and forcefully pulled him in close. Then I delivered a vicious right hook directly to his face. He cried. The blow would have rendered another person unconscious, but Ryuen just went flying backward. I had no intention of knocking him out with a single blow anyway. He hit the concrete, and I was on top of him in a moment, raining punches on his unprotected torso. You said you've never felt fear, didn't you, Ryuen? I asked. That's right. I don't know fear. I've never known it. His face bruised, his eyes nearly swollen shut. Ryuen still fought back. But his strength was all but gone, and it was all he could do to swing weakly at the air. I responded with a powerful but precise blow to his solar plexus, and his expression turned rigid. I'm a confident fighter, but it's not like I've never lost before. No, it's precisely because I've been beaten more times than other people that... I punched him again and again, alternating left and right fists in quick succession. Blood trickled from Ryuen's mouth. Damn it, it's getting hard to talk again. and yet he showed no signs of fear. Violence shows you who people really are. The ones doing the beating, and the ones being beaten. He closed his eyes and chuckled weakly. It was like he was provoking me, daring me to hit him as much as I wanted. This is probably fun, huh, Ayanokoji? You can afford to be cocky with strength like that. You're free. You can do whatever you want. Show me, Ayanokoji. He opened his eyes. I hit him again, aiming for his already swollen face. He was bleeding freely now, both internally and externally, and yet I saw no fear in him. What should have been an intrinsic emotion was nowhere to be seen. Isn't this enough for Ryuen? I proposed. But he wouldn't accept that, of course. What's the matter, Ayanokoji? I haven't given up yet. Come on, choke the life out of me. He was goading me, all but handing his life to me on a silver platter. I took another swing, and his face contorted into an expression of pain for an instant. Ow. That hurts. But that's all. Just pain. His eyes hadn't changed. He believed in losing the battle but winning the war. He had no doubts. Even if you win today, I'll keep coming at you, no matter how many times it takes, he taunted. No matter where you are at school, I'll find an opening and attack, and eventually, I'll win. He'd probably survived this long by making those sorts of comebacks. Even the strongest opponent wasn't invincible. Ryuen's self-confidence seemed to be rooted in his ability to strike back at his opponents and find openings to hit them where it hurt. He used violence to fill their hearts with fear. The fear that, once you'd made him your enemy, you'd never know when he'd attack again, or how badly he might hurt you. Go ahead. Enjoy this temporary delight. Your victory's right in front of you, Ayanokoji, he taunted. This feels good, doesn't it? It feels good to face off against a weaker opponent, doesn't it? And lurking underneath that pleasure is fear. Fear? Lurking underneath? Do you want to win? Do you want to lose? What are you feeling, Ayanokoji? Do I want to win? Do I want to lose? Are you laughing at me now that you're on top? Are you angry? Excited? Overjoyed? Maybe frustrated? Tell me! I had no idea what he was talking about. I couldn't see my own face or read my own expression, but I was certain of one thing. Something this insignificant would never shake me. I felt no emotions, and definitely not fear. I hit Ryuen in the face again. I'd lost count of how many times I'd struck him at this point, but I kept going, punching him over and over as his face twisted in pain. Yes, that's it, Ryuen. Now you see, don't you? He had to see, now, that the feeling known as fear certainly existed within him. I landed one last blow, more powerful than any before, and Ryuen finally lost consciousness. He wanted to toy with my emotions. Unfortunately for him, there was nothing there. I had no heart for him to manipulate. I slowly got off his limp body and stood. I couldn't afford to leave Karuizawa out in the cold any longer. Sorry, I put you in a really difficult situation. Are you hurt? I asked her. I'm fine. I'm just cold. I've kind of lost feeling in some places. I extended my hand toward Karuizawa, who'd sat there the whole time, watching the scene from beginning to end. When she took it, Her fingers felt like ice. "Are you disillusioned with me now?" I asked. "Of course I am. You betrayed me from the very beginning." "Yeah, I suppose you're right. So why didn't you sell me out to Ryuen?" "For my own sake. That's all there is to it," she replied before collapsing into my arms, trembling. "I was scared. I was so scared." "Don't think about it anymore. What happened today, what's happened so far. You can think about that stuff later. The only thing that's for certain right now, in this moment, is that your curse has been lifted. Manabe, no one will dig up your past again. As for what's to come, well, you can just keep going the way you always have," I told her. Karuizawa was depending on me to hold her body upright, perhaps because she lacked the strength to support herself right now. If I looked at things from her perspective, these had been a disastrous few months. She'd been bullied by Manabe and her friend through a stroke of bad luck, then been intentionally targeted for bullying as well. Finally, Ryuen had dug up the scars of her past, and she'd realized it was all because of me. Her spirit had to be shattered. She must be emotionally unstable, exhausted. "You've managed to overcome your past and create an identity as the person you are now," I told her. "Starting tomorrow, you can just pick up where you left off." This was Karuizawa Kei we were talking about. She could do it. I'd been sure of that from the moment I met her on the rooftop. "I hurt you. I won't ask you to forgive me. But please, remember just one thing. If something like what happened today happens again, I will come save you." Kiyotaka. Despite everything she'd been through, Karuizawa couldn't bring herself to stop clinging to me like a parasite. She'd reached a point where she couldn't survive at this school without me around. No matter what happened, as long as I was here, she would endure. I wondered what would have happened if I'd showed up to save her earlier. I felt quite certain that if I'd fulfilled my promise more speedily, her dependency on me would only have grown stronger. Conversely, if I had never showed up at all, abandoning her to being bullied once more like she had in the past, it would have intensified her despair. By delaying my arrival and still ultimately showing up, though, I'd strengthened her belief that she could hold on to her faith in me till that last possible moment. At the same time, it had allowed me to ascertain that she wouldn't easily betray me. Of course, if she had given Ryuen my name, she would feel guilty, and I could manipulate that guilt in my favor. After getting my hands on a pawn like Karuizawa, letting her go would be a waste. How necessary she was to my plans was secondary. What mattered most was ensuring she stayed under my control. A few steps below us, the student council president, well, the former student council president, and Chabashira-sensei are waiting. They know the circumstances to a certain degree, so they should be able to handle things, including taking care of your soaked uniform, I told Karuizawa. "Okay, what about you, Kiyotaka?" "I've still got a few things to tidy up here. Besides, we don't want to be seen together. It's best if you go first." I lightly pushed her back. Karuizawa left the roof, heading back down the stairs, and I assessed my next move. "All right, then," I muttered. I couldn't just leave the 4 unconscious people spread across the rooftop where they were. Chabashira-sensei aside, it'd be bad if another teacher found them. Starting with Ishizaki, I gently slapped their cheeks to wake them up, saving Ryuen for last. "Shh. Awake, huh? Do you think this is over, Ayanokoji?" "It's over," I said. No matter how you looked at it, this fight had been decided. Surely you're not about to say you want to keep going. "I'll use any means necessary to win," said Ryuen, slowly sitting up. "Even if it means all-out war." "Are you going to report me to the school?" "That would be really, really lame. But it is an option. What if I made it look like you set a trap for us? He asked. Let me give you some advice. I don't recommend it. The former student council president is waiting on the stairs as we speak. He may not know all the details of what happened here, but it's obvious you were the one setting a trap, Ryuen. Especially since you were caught on video spray painting the surveillance camera. I, on the other hand, was at Keaki Mall when you did that. I can produce many alibis as I need to prove it. It was smart to have as much insurance as possible, after all. So, you could have had a third-party witness everything, but you didn't? Ryuen demanded. Yes. I knew you wouldn't stop attacking me until I struck you at least once. You seriously think I'm just gonna lay down and accept defeat? Yeah, I do. There's a reason I defeated you, Ryuen. You made a mistake choosing the order of your foes. If you'd cut your teeth fighting Ichinose, and then Katsuragi and Sakayanagi, you might have been closer to my level by the time you chose to challenge me. But your curiosity got the better of you. You overplayed your hand. I didn't sugarcoat my words. Ryuen wore a bitter smile. You sure are direct. I'd like to say I'd be happy to have a rematch, but I'm done drawing attention from here on out. Target someone else, I told him. I'd expected him to lash back at that, but instead, Ryuen silently contemplated what I'd said. Since you deliberately had a witness keep his distance, that means you're keeping that card in play to use against us in the future if you have to, he said. Even if it means admitting your identity in Karuizawa's past. I'd like to avoid that, but yes. And I wouldn't be the only one going down if that happened. So would Ishizaki, Ibuki, and Albert. Huh. Probably so. I wasn't sure exactly what would happen to them, but it was safe to say it would involve a suitably harsh punishment. Your overconfidence in relying on my identity and Karuizawa's past was your undoing. If you'd been less reckless, you would have either mounted a larger scale attack or posted more lookouts, I told him. In other words, Class C's in trouble as long as I'm in charge, huh? He asked. Not necessarily. As long as you make no further attempts to attack us, I won't use this incident to advance myself. I'm not naive enough to take you at your word on that. If Class C ever corners you again, you'll report what happened today to the school. Am I right? Maybe, I said. It was certainly true that I couldn't promise him that. Who knew if Class C was even capable of functioning normally if they were forced to keep their heads down? But what are you going to do? You can't undo what happened, Ryuen. Shut up. My fight with you is finished. My own battle's over, too. Ryuen looked at Ibuki and the others, then took out his phone and typed something. He slid the phone across the roof, where it stopped by Ibuki's feet. What? Ibuki, who had been listening quietly to our conversation, glared at both of us. I take responsibility for everything, said Ryuen. Before I do, I'm transferring all my points to you. Huh? Ryuen, what are you saying? Are you nuts? Ibuki cried. Yeah, Ryuen-san. It's not like anyone's gonna blab about this, Ishizaki babbled. You don't have to take responsibility. Neither side could talk publicly about what had happened here today, but Class D held an overwhelmingly advantageous position. Ryuen realized that. There was only one way to cut his losses. Ayanokoji, I'm the sole perpetrator of this incident. My expulsion should be enough, don't you think? Oh? That sounds serious. Taking responsibility and all. Don't be dumb, snapped Ryuen, wiping some more blood from his mouth. A tyrant can only reign as long as his power holds meaning. If I've lost after coming this far, no one's gonna follow me anymore. Class C had permitted his tyrannical behavior so far because he produced results. Ryuen's methods were aggressive and heavy-handed, but once beaten, he realized that he was no longer qualified to rule. I had to give him credit for that. It would seem I'd made the right decision by choosing to set this stage and let him go on a rampage. "Stop screwing around! Why would you entrust your points to me?" demanded Ibuki. "Because you hate me. Divide the remaining points among everyone. Once the school expels me, I bet Katsuragi and Sakayanagi will void our contract. But there's nothing to be done about that," replied Ryuen. If the person named in the contract dropped out of school, that was probably exactly what would happen, too. "Ryuen-san, are you serious?" exclaimed Ishizaki sorrowfully. "Shut it. No need to shout. I can hear you just fine," Ryuen chuckled. "I'll leave the rest to you. Later." It seemed his mind was made up. He stood and approached the stairs, deaf to both Ibuki and Ishizaki's final words to him. "Are you sure? I think you'll come to regret this," I said, stopping him in his tracks. "Why do you care?" he shot back. "If you leave without knowing why you lost, you won't grow," I told him. "Huh? Are you really fine with not knowing why you lost to me?" "Let it go. There's no point trying to save me. You've got nothing to gain by sparing me now that I know about you and Karuizawa. I could expose you at any time." "True enough. If I must name a reason for sparing you, it'll work to Class D's advantage to have you crush Sakayanagi and Ichinose for us. Besides, if your contract with Katsuragi remains in place, Class A will continue to hemorrhage points. Most importantly, though, if you suddenly drop out of school, Sakayanagi and Ichinose will assume that X beat you. That spells trouble for me down the line," I said to Ryuen. "So trust me, this is to my benefit. Even if word of what happened up here gets out, I took no noticeable injuries. It would just look like you guys fought among yourselves, wouldn't it?" Ryuen ignored me. "This is what happened here," he told Ibuki instead. "I tried to punish the four of you for your failings, but you turned the tables and beat me up instead, then forced me to withdraw. I'll leave it at that." Are you really okay with that?" she asked. "Allow me to add just one thing," I said. "You are free to drop out of school of your own volition, and you're free to doubt me. But I have absolutely no intention of telling anyone about today, unless you force my hand. The former student council president has similarly promised to keep it to himself. Nothing about this situation is forcing you to withdraw, but if you do, I won't stop you." "Then don't stop me. I don't trust you," snapped Ryuen. With those words, he opened the door and vanished from sight. Ishizaki and Ibuki, left behind, looked like they didn't agree with his actions in the slightest.